Okay, it's nearly there. Okay.
Right. Are you seeing my presentation, Parveen? Have I got it up and running?
Yes, thank you. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. We are expecting some more people, but we'll just start off and then people can start joining us. Thank you for joining us today. And my name is Parveen Ali, and I work at the University of Sheffield and Doncaster and Bassett Law Teaching Hospitals as a professor of nursing and professor of gender-based violence. With this series, myself and Sarah Gardner, what we aim to do is increase understanding of research dissemination, publication, and anything that affects people about understanding of research, etc. So today's talk, we are going to talk about how to choose a journal to publish in. And I think this is one of the very common questions that we get from people asking for. There are lots of questions that people think about, like how do we choose the right kind of journal? There are issues around should we be paying for the publication? Should we go for a subscription only journal? And so on and so forth. So we are going to look into this. So if you have got any questions in the meantime, just please put them into the chat box. And what I'm going to do is just give you a little bit of an overview and we could have a discussion. Please keep your microphone muted. And if you have to ask a questions or want to comment, just use the raise hand button to do that. And that will bring my or Sarah's attention to it and we'll be able to start that. I'll let Sarah introduce herself, and then we do a little bit of a kind of asking people to tell us who you are through chat box, and then we can start the session. Sarah.
Thanks, Parveen. I'm Sarah Gardner. I'm the clinical evidence specialist at Doncaster and Bassett Law Teaching Hospitals. So in old money, that's a clinical librarian, but I'm particularly affiliated to supporting research throughout the trust. And I've been working with Parveen to put on this series of webinars looking at different aspects of the publication process and hopefully helping you along your research journey. So I will be doing some practical demonstrations of some really useful tools shortly. But before that, Parveen is going to give us the benefit of her wisdom and her extensive experience in publishing.
And are you going to ask them to information about their roles and stuff?
I have got, although while screen sharing it is a little trickier, I'm going to paste our Answer Garden link into chat, and then hopefully our audience can type in there about their roles and then tell us anything that they would like about what they're currently doing in chat. So bear with me and I will attempt to do that.
Thank you. So one of the questions that many people ask about is the how do we publish? So basically what they're saying is the publishing models, and there are different publishing models. These include I mean, before that, you can publish in many different ways. So anything to do with blog writing, writing a short piece of an article for places like Conversation, writing reports or writing into the newsletters, things like that. I mean, there are different sorts of things that people can do. But here we are talking about writing for publishers that is in academic and scientific journals, which because we are in healthcare field, so we do it in the academic and scientific community, which is related to health, and where we want our peers to talk about or look at the research that we have done or the learning that we have and that we want people to understand from. It could be a research journal which publishes research related articles. It could be a practice orientated journal. For example, if I take the example of nursing, so it could be, for instance, Nursing Standard, Nursing Times, Nursing Research, or sometimes, the journals which doesn't necessarily look at the research, but the experiences and the many other things that you have. It could be a review journal which looks at the literature reviews and other aspects. But these are generally speaking academic and scientific journals. which most of you would have used when, if not more recently than when you were students and trying to kind of, get the article and support your work around that. So we're talking about that particular model, that kind of publishing. In that publishing, people do it for various different reasons. They want to publish because they want to get credit for what they have done. They want to learn how to write to publish and therefore start to get onto that kind of journey. They want to share, as I said, what they have learned, but the research that they have done. They may want to do it to get promoted to the next level for academic progression and things like that. So there could be various different reasons for doing it. And usually people get stuck when they've started writing and then they just don't know where to go. Okay, so one of the things which we need to understand is different models of publishing, that there are different types of journal and you just don't necessarily have to only go for journal which you're asking you for money. And even if you go for them, there are options that you can choose from and think about using wisely. So the first one on the list is a subscription journal. Subscription journals, and that's the most common sort of form. What I don't understand that why people don't necessarily think of this at start, and why people go for the payment typey journals earlier on. So subscription journals are those which have always been there, and the cost of publishing is usually covered by the reader and institutions who subscribe. So reader, by it means that people who have taken subscription of specific journals, and institutions like hospitals, DBTH is an example, universities all across the world, and they subscribe to those journals to provide services to their students, faculty, clinicians, and people who are working there, and that's how journals are sustained. There may be other sort of aspects, advertisement, etc., that may also go there, but that's generally is the model. Article copyright usually is retained by the publishers. It is that at the end, once your article is accepted, once you've written a copyright thing and you've given them the copyright of what you've written, and it's mostly what it's written there. But having said that, generally, so if someone wants to have a copy of your table or a text that they have written, if it's a small one, they could use a citation sort of context. But if it's bigger one, they would have to go back to the journal to get permission to do it, and not necessarily the author. So that's the sort of copyright it means here. So these are the subscription type journal. The other one is open access journal. Open access journal, there are quite a few of these available at the moment. Open access journals are those where cost of publishing is charged to the author. So as an author, you have to pay the cost of the publishing. So rest of the process remains the same. You submit the article to the journal. It goes through the review process. It goes through all of that sort of aspects that needs to be done. But it's towards the end, once everything is accepted, and the cost of publishing, which usually is anything between £2,000 to £3,500, depending on which journal you're going for, which is borne by the authors. What then that allows them to provide that article as an open access thing. So you may have seen a small little lock which is open on different articles, which shows that this article is open access and it's not locked by subscription. So anyone, anywhere can see it. If they just click on Google Scholar or even to the journal website, they can just see it. Still, copyright is retained. Copyright here is retained by the author, but sometimes again it goes back to the publisher. There's not much difference between the two in terms of if you're an author, apart from the fact that one you require to pay and the other one you don't require to pay for it. And I'll tell you what can you do about publishing in open access as well. Then you have got preprint servers, for example, Medrivx or some of the other one, which are, there's another one which is research. Oh, I forgot the name of that one. Oh, it will come to me. So basically what these are, that it's all around the initiatives of open publishing and making sure that science is accessible to as many people as possible. So what has been happening that before submitting a manuscript to the journal, people submit their preprints, which essentially means that what they have submitted to the journal, that copy in the Word document they submit, but then MedRevex or some of the other preprint servers also has the ability, and the article looks like a published article. It has got a DOI, like identification number, a website which you can click. What it is that this article is not peer reviewed and is not yet accepted by publication, but it's available for people to have access to and to kind of, have a look at it. So as it says, it's unpublished, uploaded free, there's no peer review. That's what it is. Over past 3 or 4 years, this practice has increased, and some journals have started encouraging authors to submit, or if they're not encouraging, they're not opposing it. Let's put it this way. And it's okay for people to submit as well as to submit to the journal, and it goes through the review process. Other journals don't accept it. So editors and others question in terms of, because, when they look at the authenticate report or the similarity report, it usually comes as 100%. So it means that the material is copied and you has copied yourself because the article is submitted at 2 different places. That causes a problem in some ways. And some journals clearly articulate that we are not going to accept any preprints. Some journals say that you're allowed to have to submit preprints once your article is accepted or have some sort of decision on, but you're not allowed to do this while it is going through the peer review process. But this is one of those things which is evolving. So I think the thing here is to have a read through and look around what the journal is saying around that. Preprint articles are available outside, but they are just preprints. They are not submitted or accepted or published articles, so they don't have the same value as those which are submitted in open access or subscription journals. They're just, the message is out there. If anyone needs to know it or read through it, that's what it serves the purpose. And once the manuscript is accepted, usually authors then update the preprint with the recent version, and there is some information which says that it is a preprint, and that's how it's done. Then you have got hybrid model, where it's a mixed model, and many journals are using this at the moment, which means that you submit through the normal processes, and the article go through the normal sort of mechanisms of peer review and everything else. And then they ask you if you would like to pay and if you would like to keep your article as open access. If you have the means to pay, you pay, and the article is kept open access. If you don't have the means to pay, it becomes a subscription only sort of. So for my journal, which is Journal of International Nursing Review, we have this hybrid model that we publish some articles which are under the subscription sort of aspect, and if someone wants to publish under open access, we do that. So that's depends. Then you have got predatory journals, and this is something that you have to be wary of. I have always have these questions in mind that, when it comes to predatory journal, what is a predatory journal? Because at the end of the day, many of these journals are published by different publishers. So is it that a new company who has just setting up is a predatory journal, or is it about practices? So generally speaking, it's about practices, because predatory journals to me are those which promise people that we are going to publish your article in 2 weeks or 3 weeks time, and they charge people money, and actually that article doesn't go through any peer review or any sort of kind of mechanism of viewing that what you have done is appropriate. And as an author, what the impact of this is that you lose your work. So you've submitted your original work to those articles. These predatory journals are not accepted and recognized by the institution that you work in. So the work that you're published in, it basically tarnishes your name, And it's just that, it's seen as an attempt to publish things quickly. So you've lost the work and you've actually got a mark on your thing, and you can't use it for your promotion and anything else. So I think that's where we need to be aware of. I think what's important to note here that you can choose any of the way of doing it, and unless it's a pseudo predatory journal, it doesn't make a difference in terms of the amount of time it's going to take to publish an article. So if you submit, so normally speaking, when you submit to a journal, you can think of at least about 1 or 2 weeks for editorial assistants to have a look at the manuscript to make sure that it meets all the requirements and everything else. Then it goes to the editor-in-chief for somebody like me who looks at if it's the scope and everything else is fine. So you can have another 2 weeks, depending on, they've got a big list. So by the time they come to you, so how many have we got? 4 weeks. Then the editor-in-chief would assign associate editors or others who will then also have a look at it and decide. So let's put another 2 weeks in there. So 6 weeks. Then it goes to peer review, and we need to identify at least 2 people to review an article. And can you make a guess as to how many people do we need to go through to get 2 people? Any guesses? Come on, guys. Can you guess, Sarah?
Oh, something like 10.
Sometimes it's 30. So to be able to get 2 people assigned to an article, we may have to go through 10 people, and we can't invite them all at once. We have to do it in batches to try and kind of see, okay, fine, because if you've got, God knows, if there is an article which is very popular, you've got 10 people saying, it has never happened, but in my experience, but that's what you're scared of. And then you want to make sure that, you're not, what do you call it, adding to the people's inboxes and closing them. So sometimes we have to go to 30, sometimes even more than that, to be able to get at least 2 people to review an article. So what I meant to say here, that you can see that how difficult it is, and you can appreciate how long does it take to. So where were we? 6 weeks. And let's work here on a good scenario where we have submitted to the first 10 and we have got 2 people already sorted and agreed to do it. That's going to take, at least for the associate editors, it's going to, we said two weeks is for them to do it, but assigned, so let's put them 4 weeks. So 2, 4, 6, it's 8 weeks now, yeah? Peer review usually get at least 8 to 12 weeks, generally speaking, for them to be able to review and to give us feedback. And sometimes they can request more, depending on how busy they are and if they need more time. So let's work around the principles of 12 weeks. So where were we earlier on? 12 weeks and 8 weeks. So it's 20 weeks already. Yeah. And so then the peer reviewer, 2 of them come back, and the editors looks at it again, look at the review, look at the everything else, and let's put just 1 week there. 21 weeks. Then it comes back to you as an author. And then you are given at least about 4 to 8 weeks for review. So let's say 6 weeks here. Okay, 21 and 6, 27 weeks. You've made the revision. Usually the authors can ask for extension. Most people submit within 8 weeks or so, sometimes longer, but let's work around that. So how many were there? 27 weeks, we said, right? Mm-hmm. Right. So then the clock starts again once you've resubmitted, and the whole process repeats itself. Okay. So it goes back to the stage 1, which I said, we can reduce the number of weeks earlier on. So if they were the 4 weeks of different things, but let's take 2 weeks out. So 27 weeks and double it up. So it's 27 and 27. How many? 52 weeks. Yeah. So let's take 2 weeks out. So at least about 50 weeks. Let's say 50th week, your article gets accepted. Then it goes to the copy editor and other people who would look at it, the various things. And let's add another 4 weeks to it. So 50, 54 weeks. And it comes back to you for the final. So roughly speaking, it takes about 60 weeks. Okay. How many months are these?
Yeah, well over a year.
So let's see at least a year. Okay. And if an article is really good and if it goes through all that process very, very quickly and everything else, it will still take at least about 6 to 8 months. Okay, to go through the process. So there is no easy or quicker way of dealing with it. And one of the reason for this is that most of these people who are working on it, starting from editors to peer reviewers, they're not paid people. They do it in their own time. And even if they are paid, it's just an honorarium. They don't necessarily get paid for the time and the effort which they have. Peer reviewers, other people, none of them, and authors themselves. Okay, authors, depending on the research grant, there may be some proportion to have that, but you know, people are doing it on top of their normal work, so that's why it takes that long. So if anyone says to you that your article is going to get published in 2 weeks, 3 weeks time, it's not. Can I go back to the
all right, yes.
Yeah, so that's not true. Okay. Okay, we can go to the next slide, and I think I've lost so that's the understanding of what happens when you submit. One of the things you can do is that when it comes to open access publishing requires you to pay, but it still has to go through the same process and everything else. But there are different ways of paying for it. So sometimes people have the money already established and agreed in their research grants. So when we write research grants or when we bid for money for the various research projects, it's at that time that we ask for the money to be there for publishing as well. And you could use to pay for that money for publishing and to just take it on from there. And if you are not able to pay it yourself, what do you do it? So should you look for open access articles which are asking for the payment charges? Maybe not. There are, if we talk about, I'll take the example of nursing here. So we have got around 128 journals which are listed on Clarivate list of publishing, which means that they are on the Web of Science. They are not predatory. They are recognized journals. There is the ranking system. All of them have got impact factor and so on and so forth. And these are 129 journals which has got an impact factor. Okay. I'm only giving you example of nursing journals. You can broaden the fact to health-related journals, medical journals, and other journals. There was a time when you could only publish in discipline-specific journals because people would subscribe to those journals and they would only read them. So therefore, there was this thing about that, you know, if you want to write to audiologists, you will have to publish in a journal about audiology and audiologists because they will only subscribe to that journal, and that's how they're going to access that information. Gone are those days. What now happens that, you know, in terms of subscription and availability online, most articles are on online. So it doesn't really matter where you publish, as long as you have looked at the audience and what you've written is appropriate. So if you're a nurse, you can still publish in a public health related journal if the topic relates to that. If you're a public health professional, you appear to have doing research on speech and language therapy or nursing or something else, you can publish into a nursing journal. I publish stuff around domestic abuse into nursing journals and stuff around domestic abuse and nurses into domestic abuse related journals. So it doesn't matter where you publish as long as it's related to them, which then means that you have got a broader pool and not only those 129 journals. So there's a big pool of journals that you could choose from. Just be aware that, you know, none of them are going to be very quick. So therefore, avoid submitting to predatory journals, which in itself is a quite tricky task. And we have another session around this. Coming to the article processing charges, It's also worth looking into the university or the institutions that you're working in, because sometimes institutions have agreements with publishers. And if you published, so for instance, International Nursing Review has an agreement with University of Sheffield and some of the other universities. So if any academic publishes from those institutions, they can get their APC slashed, so they don't need to pay. So it's worth checking those aspects. If it's not you as a first author, it may be one of the authors in your team who is working in that kind of an institution, and maybe they will be able to get that processing charge waived for you. So it's worth looking into those options before you submit. But what I wanted to say here is that regardless of the mode that you choose or the type of journal that you choose, it shouldn't affect the quality of submission and the time of submissions. It could be more or less kind of much or that, but generally speaking, it stays the same unless it's a preterist journal, which is very difficult to spot. How you spot that, as I say, we can have another session on that, and we do have another sessions previously recorded on this as well. But ask advice for people who are experienced, people who have done that, and they can tell you a little bit more about it, and just do your due diligence around that. No journal is going to ask you to pay upfront. Usually the subscription only, though, even those open access publishing, even if they are doing open access publishing, they will ask you how you're going to pay this, that, the other, but the money wise, they will only ask you to pay once everything is done and article is accepted. They're not going to ask you to do this earlier on. I hope this helps, and if you have got any questions, I'm happy to answer, and then we can move on to Sarah and she can take it further. So if any questions up until now, please ask. Wow, either I've been very, very clear or nobody has understood anything which I was saying. Okay, I will leave you in Sarah's capable hand to take it from here. And then we could, if you've got any questions, I can take them and Sarah can take them as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Parveen. I think we've got a slide later on, or at least a link to the Think, Check, Submit website, and I'd very much appreciate it if you would take us through that when we get to it. But before then, I'm going to do some exploration of some of the really practical tools that you can use to find potential journals to publish in, and then you can apply your criteria to those journals to see which is suitable for you and for your topic. So it's going to break down into roughly three areas, really. The DIY approach, some publisher-specific tools, and then we can look at ones which are more independent and look at the whole of market, if you like. So let's move on and start to explore this a little bit. So the most sensible place to start really is just ask yourself, what do you read? So it's fairly natural to gravitate to the titles where you look for your professional information. But there are places that you can browse to see the big publishers' work. So publishing houses have sort of stables, if you like, of journal titles, and so that you can Google for the big medical publishers. But you could use a product like Browsy. So I'm going to show you that in a second. It's available on the web. You can Google for Browsine. Doncaster and Bassett Law Trust have an enhanced subscription to it, but you can just look at any big university, look up and see if they've got a Browsine collection. You can look at any big NHS trust and see what they've got. So let's do a little bit of wild web surfing, which is always slightly tricky. Let's visit Browsine and see if this works. Right, I think I'll come out of that and go to something I can rely on. Okay, so say I've Googled for Browsine, and I'm going to search for Doncaster, even though our collection can't rival some of the massive university collections. I'm going to use ours as a basis for it. So Browsine is a place to browse journals, full text journals. So it's gone to Doncaster's holdings, but literally anyone can look at anyone else's collections. The only limit will be on what you're eligible to view in full text, but provided you kind of accept that, that's fine. Go and have a nosy around anyone's full text collection. So let's have a look. What shall we go for? I'll start
Sorry,
with...
Sarah, we can still just only see the slides, I'm afraid.
Oh no, bear with me. Right, thanks for letting me know. That's rookie error. You'd think after so much Zoom in and Teams in, I would have got this sorted. Okay, where have I gone? Okay, how's that? Is that looking a little bit more in tune with the words that I'm saying?
That's better, thank you.
Cheers, Philip. Much appreciate that. Right, we're at Browsine. You can Google for Browsine and check it out. And I've gone for Doncaster's Holdings. And I'm going to have a little quick flick into, let's go with physical therapy. So it presents a nice selection of titles. So you've got a visual indication of the kind of journals which publish in particular areas if you were unaware of the really big range. This particular product has got them initially sorted by A to Z, but it also has a journal ranking, which is not the same as Impact Factor, but it is an impression of their kind of influence in the field. So you can sort them and then pick off the top few journals that are in your field, and then you can explore to see further if they publish the kind of material that you're interested in. So Browsine has definite benefits in that it's visual, it's quick. We can have a look at nursing and see what's there. So I'll go back to the choices and have a look in the nursing and allied health field. Let's narrow by nursing, and then what shall we go with? Well, nursing research. Let's just see if someone's publishing about research in nursing research. So there's plenty to go at here. You can have a look and see what you might not have come across before, sort them by rank to get an impression of their kind of impact in the field. So Browsine is really handy. I'm going to have to stop sharing and flick in and out until I can solve my dance of the screen shares. And I think there's something in chat. So Parveen, I'm not sure if you're still dipping in and out. So let me have a little check there. That's the note to say can only see the slides. Right, let me...
You've gone out of slides, Sarah.
I've gone out of slides now. I'm having to... do you know what I'll do? I'll share my entire screen, which is always a bit of a dodgy.
Yeah, I think that's better, yeah.
So flicking in between the two might make me look a little bit more professional. Okay. So what titles do you read? Have a look in Browsine. Discuss with your colleagues. If they're published, where would they recommend? What's their experience of the process like with any particular titles? You might find little nuggets of experience that are really, really valuable. Or the other thing that you can do is to use a big database like PubMed to get a quick overview of articles that are on a similar topic to yours. So at the risk of looking like a rank amateur again, I'm going to have a little go on PubMed. So I've got something in mind to have a look at, and I have got PubMed up here already. So say my field was kind of hybrid sort of physio, but working in maternity. I might be interested in writing about in the, let's see, pelvic floor muscle training postnatally. Let's see what's out there, because that's the field that I'm writing my article in. So there's quite a few, 95, that's not absolutely tons, but I'm thinking it's going to be a systematic review. So I'll limit in PubMed to systematic review to see who my contenders are. Let's have a look. Let's go with, oh, that one looks interesting. Okay. I'll have a look at that article. So the really nice feature about PubMed, which you're probably very aware of, is that as well as being a vehicle to do proper systematic searching, it has a really interesting additional kind of feature, which is it gathers together similar articles and then presents you with no effort whatsoever with at least half a dozen on quick show, and then you can ask it to see all similar articles to the one that you have identified you're interested in. And I'm going to hang on to that PubMed article on the effectiveness of group-based pelvic floor muscle training, preventing and treating urinary incontinence for antenatal and postnatal women. A really interesting topic. The PubMed page will allow me to draw on some information about that article, and I can use that in some of the Journal Finder tools in a minute. And so you can build on a very quick search, can give you interesting articles, related material, and then you can use the information to search a little bit more specifically. So let's go on a step. So that would be the DIY approach. There are a number of other tools that you can use. Independent tools are ones that would look much, much wider than simply a publisher's list of journals. So we'll have a look in one of these to start with, and that's Jane. I think they really stretched themselves to get their name there. So the journal author name estimator, really. I will risk setting that going live, and then we can have a look. I'm hoping you're still following this now. It's working a little bit more slick. So if you are looking at Jane, and Philip, I'm going to rely on you to tell me if you're not. It's a really big friendly box there to park some information in, and it's expecting really that you've probably written your article, and so you have your title and your abstract ready to paste in. But because I'm adopting for the purposes of this webinar that pelvic floor article, I'm going to go back into PubMed and borrow some bits. So I'm going to borrow the title. I'm going to whack it in here. Now, it's quite a full title, to be honest. If the title was a little bit on the skimpy side, then I might also paste in the abstract to give the AI at the back of this journal estimator some more data to work with. But what I would use, because it's particularly sort of pointed there, are the author given keywords, which PubMed adds in, and I'll borrow those as well. So I'm going to stick those in. It doesn't matter where you put them. It's going to just suck all of the useful words out of that box and do something with it to offer journals that it thinks are an appropriate fit. And I'm going to just change the spelling of pelvic there to one that I actually recognize. Okay, so the really quick thing is to go find journals. I'll show you some extra options in a minute. It's very straightforward, really. You can't break it, and there's not a lot else going on. It's giving an approximation of the confidence that the tool has that these particular journal titles are relevant to the topic and the data that you gave it to search. You get a useful indication here of whether they're open access or not. If they're flashed in orange, they are. If they're not flashed in orange, then they are not, basically. They will tell you where they're indexed, which gives you some sort of little comfort blanket. And you can also just quickly flick and check what articles they've acquired to give them that confidence that it was relevant. So I'm expecting, if I ask it to show articles, then the original article that I've given it is going to be in that set, and it's also found other related material that's published by that individual journal. So that's not bad. You can get really quite a lot of suggestions here and subscription model. But if you were at this stage completely sure where you want to look, then in the extra options on the search page and that feature, access journals, you can opt for that, or processing charges, then you written a particular publication type and you want options to choose here. I would just say, because I've popped in there a systematic review, if I opted for meta-analysis as a publication type, it won't necessarily find systematic reviews that have a narrative conclusion and didn't do meta-analysis. So it's a little bit too precise, that. So I'm leaving that general. So Jane as a tool is extremely helpful. I'll show you what happens if we exclude all the open access stuff, and we can just, it will limit our search results. So no more orange flashes. So the only search that the only titles that you have here are the subscription-based ones, and you can get a feel for titles which may be appropriate. So, I mean, it's not infallible, but it is a really quick and easy way to begin that search. So let's see what else we've got to play with. So EndNote as a reference management tool is extremely handy, but you don't have to have the subscription version of EndNote for it to be valuable to you for this particular purpose, because built into the free version of EndNote in EndNote Web, they have a matching facility, which we're going to explore just now. So I will nip to EndNote, and I use this to collect references up for various purposes, and I have in my references a great many separate folders with articles that I've collected over the years for different purposes. So I'm going to use the match function. Now, this is free. You do have to obviously set yourself up an account on EndNote Web for it to function. You don't have to have done anything with it at all, apart from want to use it for this purpose. And so we can add our title and abstract detail in here. So this, going back to PubMed to do a little bit more harvesting, this journal article is really doing some heavy lifting here. So I'm going to whack the title in the title bit. And I am going to use the abstract because you never know what else it might do. So I'm going to park the whole of the abstract in that little box. And the additional thing that it can do is, if you have used EndNote in the preparation of the article, now I know I haven't written this one, but pretending I had, if I had used EndNote and I had got my references available, I can also get it to look in there. So as it happens, I do have a set of material on pelvic floor. So I'm going to add that in, and it will look at the citations I've got in that folder and harvest all of those data points to help it find me suitable journals. So it's quick and it's easy. This is a nice option if you have used EndNote. It's not an essential. It still will use what you've put in the title and abstract fields to do its best. So when I ask it to find some titles, it doesn't look a million miles away from what we've seen before, but you have a little bit more information here. So let me move my set of your pictures away. And it's offering a variety of journals. These are mixed in terms of subscription and open access. As Parveen mentioned earlier, this little open lock symbol indicates a fully open access journal. Now, what it would like you to do is it wants to be really helpful, and it's offering, do you want to submit to this journal? Now, this looks handy, but actually I would suggest don't choose that option, only because it's likely to take you to a page within the publisher's website that assumes you have an account on there and you are in fact ready to submit. So you kind of get into a bit of a cul-de-sac if you go there speculatively. It would be more useful to check on the journal homepage. And so with a bit of luck, we'll go and do that. Oh, I bet there's a pop-up somewhere that I've missed. Hang on a second. Oh, my pop-up blocker is in full swing. Okay, so I was going to demonstrate going to a journal site so that I could show you what the most valuable place on the journal's page is, and that's their author guidelines. So you have to imagine, because I'm not going to try tangling with my pop-up blocker whilst I'm being videoed on a live webinar. So sue me. The author guidelines are absolute gold, as an author. As a speculative author, you could check them out and it will tell you exactly what types of article they're going to accept or not accept. It will give you the detail of how you need to present your article for consideration, down to whether they want it double-spaced, single-spaced, how they want you to handle your tables, how they want you to handle your references, what format your references will need to be in. That kind of material is absolutely vital. What you would not do is the equivalent of sending your CV out speculatively, where you can't tailor it to a job vacancy. Don't do the same thing when you're trying to submit articles to journals. You need to do some heavy tailoring to the individual journal that you have identified is the one for you. Tailor your article to their requirements, and that gives you your best chance of getting through the first sift and making it along your pathway to being published. So I won't hammer that point home any harder, but tools like EndNote and Jane can identify suitable or titles for you to explore, and then when you look them up, go onto the author guidelines pages. Right, let's go back to my presentation if I can find it. I do believe I'm on this page. Right, let's zip to looking at some of the publisher tools. Now, Elsevier, Sage, Wiley, Taylor and Francis, like who else would there be? Some of the big university houses, so OUP or Cambridge. These big publishers have lots of titles within them. So Wiley, an enormous stable of individual titles. So we'll have a look at some of these. We won't look at them all because once you've seen one, really, you've seen them all. But you have to bear in mind, these journal matchers, journal suggesters, as they call them, journal finders, are only going to look in the titles that that particular publishing house has to offer. So find the right journal for your research. Oh, look, you enter your abstract. You could also enter keywords, journal title, etc. You would just pop it in there, find the journals. It's sort of, I don't mean it in a dismissive way, but this is not rocket science. You are just letting its systems do some matching with the information that you're giving it. So if you haven't fully developed your article yet, but you find something similar, you could use that as inspiration and then look at the author guidelines and see how to tailor what you're doing to the types of article that they require, if you're not fixed on that, or just otherwise better able to aim your article in the right direction. So we won't spend too much time on Elsevier's. But what we might have a little look at is Taylor and Francis. So another publishing house, but they, I'll click to their journal suggester, but that's not the only place on their website that I'm going to point you at, because and I assume some other big publishers do this, but they have gone out of their way to offer advice to aspiring authors. Now, I'm sure it's not completely altruistic. I'm sure what they'd like you to do is to think Taylor and Francis are lovely. Let's choose one of their titles. But actually, whilst you are exploring the field to find a journal to publish in, why not take advantage of their advice? So they have a blog for kind of aspiring authors. They have their journal suggester, which is asking you to paste your abstract in. It wants some data points in order to reveal suggested journals. But there are other things here that are really, really handy. So they've got a how to publish your research page. I'm taking a couple of steps back along that little breadcrumbs trail here, because they have a step-by-step guide, including a really nice little PDF, all about choosing your journal, the considerations for different types of publishing. It's looking at, I think this was the preprint server potentially that Parveen was thinking of before, F1000 research. So you've got some advice there from a big publishing house, very reputable, and you could follow that. So to supplement the insights that Parveen and I are trying to impart today, some of the big publishing houses also have additional information that that you might find really handy. I will nip back to my presentation just in case there's anything additional to pull out of here. I don't think I will visit any more of the individual publishers tools because you can explore those for yourselves and they're really straightforward. What I will do is send a PDF version of my presentation with all of the links in it out to everyone who's registered their interest in today's webinar, so that you can, if you haven't Googled for the things that I've been doing, then you can follow them up later on and all the links should work. So Parveen, I think I am at an end with my practical demonstration. So my next slide is going to be on the topic of evaluating journals. So thinking critically about the journal itself so that it matches your purpose, but it's also more tools to avoid the dreaded predatory journals. So Parveen, if you're okay to pick up now, whenever you're ready, let me know and I will click on the Think Check Submit site and you can take it from there. Would that be okay? Okay, there's just a chance that Parveen is doing something additional right now. So I'm going to stop sharing for a moment and check out the chat.
Hi, sorry, I'm here.
No, that's all good. Thank you. There's a question about whether the session is being recorded. And yes, it will be on Parveen's YouTube channel. And I can send a link out to that after the webinar to everyone that has registered. So that shouldn't be a problem. Right, let me go back to my presentation.
There was another question that somebody asked, when is the writing process would you select the preferred journal? Okay, that's a good question. And so many people ask that. What people do, generally speaking, is that write the paper and then look for the journal. If you are, what's the word which I would say to you? It's about the planning process, isn't it? So you need to know, you wouldn't start your car journey before knowing where you're going, would you? So you would always have in mind that I need to go to this place, and that's when you set off. Similarly, it's important that you look at the journal and choose the journal first before starting writing, or at least at the time when you're starting to write. What I normally suggest is give yourself 3 journals. Identify journals that you want to look at. Write a little abstract, write the message that you want to give it. What is it that you want to convey? That would allow you to understand who is your audience and who are you writing it for, which would then allow you to choose a journal which suits your needs and which suits the message and everything else that you're doing. Once you have chosen that, try and identify journals, 3 journals at least, which give you similar word length or similar sort of word length, referencing style, etc., etc. There is some similarity around it. Why it is important? Because then it allows you, if you get rejected from one journal, it will allow you need to mess about less with the article to submit to the next journal. So it just makes your life a little bit easier. Go for the journal which gives you higher word count first. You could do it otherwise too, and higher word count and higher impact factor first. Chances are you will get rejected from it. Be prepared for it. The reason for going to this is that if you get accepted, wow, that's done. Not a problem at all. That's the goal achieved. If you don't get accepted, chances are that you will get good feedback, and that feedback will help you improve the quality of the manuscript that you are writing, and the likelihood of publication into the next journal increases. So that's my sort of suggestion. Choosing a journal beforehand also allows you to then make sure that you meet your author's guidelines. So once you've written everything and then going back and checking author's guidelines and fitting into that kind of mold is not that easy. Whereas if you have seen the author's guideline, you know which journal you're going, so then you know the word limit, you know the style of headings, you know referencing, you know this, that, how many tables you're allowed, this, that, the other. You could develop your manuscript in a way that fits the journal, so it takes it's much more efficient and much more useful. And final thing is use Reference Manager to sort your references and to use your references into your manuscript. This saves a lot of time and energy. And if you have to submit to another journal, you just need to change the layout, but with just one click, and that just makes it easier. Okay, I hope that answers your question. There's another question somewhere, I think. Okay, great. Think, check, submit. So can we go on to this website, please? So this is basically to look at the evaluator journal as to what is it that you want to see into a journal before when you decide to publish it. Can you see the screen?
I'm hoping so. Is that showing okay?
Okay, just go down, please. Yeah. Yeah, just a little bit up. Yeah, reference this list for your chosen journal to check if it is trusted. So what is it that you need to do? Have you read any articles in that journal before? So, think there are a few things that you need to think through and you need to understand. So if you haven't heard of that journal, I mean, chances are that by the time you're starting writing, you're an experienced professional in your own right, and you would have read and seen journals before as part of your academic study or otherwise. So have you read any articles in that journal before? Is it easy to discover the latest paper in that journal or not? Name of the journal, the name is unique. It's not the same or easily confused with another journal. It's unique name and you remember it. And can you cross-check with information about the journal in the ISSN portal, as in the ISSN number that they have and everything else? These are some of the things that help. Now, with predatory journals, some of them have not only used very identical names, but they are also using very identical websites as well. So therefore, making sure and spending your time thinking through these things does help. Can you easily identify and contact the publisher? Is the publisher name clearly displayed on the journal website? Can you contact the publisher by telephone, email, or on post? So again, publisher is something that, if you are reading articles, etc., in your own field, you would know the major publishers, which includes Wiley, which include Elsevier, Sage, BMC, and some of those big names that you would already know, and there are many journals that they are publishing. Taylor and Francis, there are some smaller ones as well, but usually they are quite contactable and there's a lot of information there. If you think there's a new publisher or you don't know the name or anything seems dodgy, just ask advice from somebody else and that helps. Is the journal clear about the type of peer review it uses? Does it helps you understand how the peer review happens into the journal? What is the process? How many reviews per paper are needed? And a little bit of information about that. Is the publisher offering a review by an expert editorial board or by researchers in your subject area? So checking what they're saying as to how the review is going to happen. Check the editorial board as well. What is the composition of this? Is it very international? People are coming from all different sides. Usually for journals, there are specific people who are doing this. So if it's a nursing journal or medicine journal, you will have people who are medics and who are healthcare professionals, or you wouldn't have engineers into it. You wouldn't have kind of pilots into it. Whereas the predatory journals, you will have all sorts of discipline. And I know I said earlier on that, you could publish your article in any journal, but having said that, you're not going to publish, if you're a health researcher, medic, or a nurse, or an AHP, you're not going to publish into an engineering journal, are you? Unless it was some sort of device that you've created. So usually it's a similar, in one journal, you won't get articles published around, I don't know, aerospace something, and the pressure sore ulcers into the same thing. These are very different sort of things. So if the journal gives you that kind of thing, that probably is not the right aspect. Are the article indexed or archived in dedicated service? So will your work be indexed, archived, and easily discoverable database such as PubMed, Scopus, or any of that? And usually journal describe all those sorts of things. Does the publisher ensure long-term archiving and preservation? Again, that's something that can be checked. Does the publisher use permanent digital identifiers, DOIs, for your article and stuff? And that's pretty standard for most journals and most articles. Is it clear with what fees will be charged? And if there is APC, do they tell you the process and how much they're going to charge this, that, the other? And usually this should be very clearly articulated onto their website. For most journals, it's already states there very clearly. And I think that should help you make that decision. Next. Any guidelines provided for authors and publisher website? For open access journal, does the publisher have a clear license policy as to how this is going to be licensed and everything else? Do they allow you to retain copyrights? And these various elements that you need to see. Sarah, would you be able to have a look at it for just once? I'll, if I can take the door, please.
Yeah, sure. Just checking I'm not on mute there. Yeah. So where did Parveen go to? Yeah, so the copyright issue we talked about a little bit before. If that's important to you, then you need to establish that clearly, whether you're retaining the copyright in your work and it will be published under a Creative Commons license, or whether the publisher will own the copyright in your work, more usual in the subscription models. And if that's important, then you need to choose appropriately. So you can check some of these extra elements. The publisher's website should have all of the information that you need regarding how it would handle conflicts of interest between authors, editors, and reviewers, and also what format your paper is going to be available in. All right, Parveen, do you want to?
Yeah, so I think as an established author, most of these things you already kind of unconsciously remember, if that makes sense. But I think when you're starting off with your journey, I think these things help, and it may still not make sense. It may still be very confusing and kind of, not knowing how this works. And I think just ask a mentor, have somebody, a senior colleague who's published, ask them, they can help you. If you are in university or doing some courses, ask your tutor, they can help you. Ask librarians within the trust or within the university, and they can also help you with understanding on various different elements around that, and to make a decision as to where to publish. This checklist is in a way that, if you can tick and then you submit, and it gives you some sort of an answer as to can you trust this or not. So I think that's a good strategy of doing it. And I think if you use these 2-3 various different things that we've just talked about, I think that just makes it easier to a certain extent. And as I say, still you have any questions, ask someone. Okay, and then we also talk about the principles of transparency and best practice in scholarly publishing, and that's Committee of Publishing Ethics. And there's a lot of resources and guidelines that you should be using for various different articles, for various different things that needs to be used, and how transparency should be ensured, and various other aspects. So it's worth kind of looking into it and understanding. There's a lot of information about who should be an author, order, and all the rest of the stuff, which is a little bit out of scope of today, but there is a lot that you need to understand in the process. But I think first thing is always how to choose a journal and which journal to go for. That's your first step. But these are some background information that you need to know, and you're not required to understand to remember or to kind of to keep a note of everything. It's just being aware as to where you can go to find some information, and knowing who you can ask some questions to be able to make those decisions.
We have one more slide with that's a request for feedback. So I will put that up, but then obviously we'll be open for questions and discussion. Would that be all right, Parveen?
Yeah. So do you have a next slide, or this is the last one?
I have that slide so that we can also keep that up on the video. And then if anyone feels particularly moved when they've watched the video, they can give us additional feedback. That was
excellent. Good. Thank you so much for that. And I hope this has been useful. I'm happy to, and me and Sarah both are happy to take any questions. Please ask.
So I'll stop sharing and I'll start parking things in the chat.
Any questions?
I think we've dazzled them, Parveen. Right, I'm going to put the feedback link.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Anybody else have any questions? I'm just going to put you on spot now then. Philip, do you have any questions?
Nothing from me, no, thank you.
Thank you. And is it Nolna? Do you have any questions?
No questions. Thanks, Nontlantla. At work, they call me Noni for
Noni.
ease.
Sorry, Noni.
But thank you so much. I really appreciate
Yeah.
I really appreciate how you showed us the practical way, because that's one of the things I have a paper that I'm trying to finalize. So at least now I can, use the abstract and just see where it would fit. Thank you so much.
Good, thank you. And I know Elizabeth doesn't have question and she can't unmute herself. So thank you so much, everybody. If you ever want to get in touch, please do get in touch. We'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have. And I hope you found this useful. So thanks a lot.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.